Welcome everyone to Gamer Meld. I'm currently working on some really cool videos that you'll see soon, so I thought I'd do a talking head video because we have a bunch of stories. Starting with Intel's Arc GPUs getting a performance boost, the 4070 Ti it is, 7900 reference cards are in, AMD's new GPUs are having major supply issues, and the 7900 XTX has finally been tested. And with the 7900 series just days away, make sure you're ready with Meld Alerts, my completely free newsletter that sends you an email when new PC hardware is released. Because let's be honest, keeping up with all the hardware releases can be tricky. And don't worry, I only tell you the important stuff like CPUs, GPUs, etc. Plus I'll send you great deals as those come out as well. That way you don't have to worry when new hardware is releasing. So don't wait any longer. It's completely free at meldalerts.com. Once again, that's meldalerts.com. Make sure to check that out today. Okay, it's news time, and first up for today, Intel's Arc A770 was finally released a couple months ago, and with it came some fairly decent performance if the games were pretty new. And Intel made it clear that their main focus is going to be on newer APIs like DirectX 12 and Vulkan. Well, they just released a new driver that thoroughly helps performance in DX9 games. Now, I'm not sure if it's all DX9 games, they definitely only show a few games here, but the performance that we're seeing, at least in these games, is pretty impressive. As you can see right here, the lowest in performance increase is only 0.03 times, but as we move on up, we see with League of Legends, we're talking 36% faster, 1.48 times or 48% faster in StarCraft, upwards of 1.79 times the performance, and this is only a driver difference in CSGO. So not bad here at all. Of course, this is 1080p, and you actually do see a pretty decent jump in 1440p Ultra as well. Moving on to this slide, we do see up to 1.8 times faster versus the previous driver, and not only that, but that's just average FPS, but when we look at the 99th percentile FPS, we get up to 2.3 times faster. Definitely a nice boost in performance, especially given it's free. Moving on, we have a pretty interesting story on the 4070 Ti. For those who've been following the channel for a little while, and really quickly, if you aren't, a subscribe would be very much appreciated. Either way, if you have been following, you know that from what we've seen so far, it looks like the 4070 Ti is effectively going to be what the 12GB 4080 was. Not long ago, Nvidia of course canceled the 12GB 4080, claiming that, it was an issue with the name because it's confusing to have two GPUs that are both 4080 but are very different. Yet right after that, they released a new GPU that was the same name as another one and is very different, and they've done this a ton of times in the past. No, it's pretty much 100% because people were pretty outraged at the pricing and the fact that it was called a 4080 when there's such a massive difference between the 12GB and 16GB model, and that is pretty understandable. Regardless, what we have here is that, as you can see, Colorful actually revealed the first 4070 Ti. Here are images of the card, but the really important part is that they actually shared some specs. Starting things off, you can see that the base clock is 2310 MHz, which is very interesting because when we look at the 12GB 4080, we can see that its specs for the base clock were 2310 MHz. Moving back, we can see that it also comes with 12GB of GDDR6X across a 192-bit bus, 285-watt TDP power consumption. Pretty much all of these things point to this being what the 4080 was set to be. Now, it does not show CUDA cores, but if I were to guess, they are almost certainly going to be the same as the 4080. Once again, this is almost certainly what Nvidia did. Instead of calling it a 4080, they're planning to call it a 4070 Ti. And next up for today, we have a pretty quick story on the upcoming 7900 XTX and XT. As you can see here, Sapphire accidentally, or at least it seems like accidentally because it does look like it's still there, but apparently they actually put up the reference 7900 XT and 7900 XTX on their Amazon US web store. And obviously, as you can see, this looks just like the cards that we saw when AMD announced these cards. And we've seen this before where AMD has board partners that will sell their actual reference designs. They do look pretty good. Obviously, that's all a matter of opinion, but if you are wanting to see some more pictures of that, you can actually check that out on Amazon. And speaking of AMD's 7900 series, I actually have some bad news. As you can see here in the title, it actually references to the China launch reportedly being delayed, but it isn't just that. But I'll get to that in a second. First, as you can see, Chinese hardware leakers, ECSM Official, and Megasize GPU believe that reference 7900 series cards will not be available initially in mainland China due to import regulations. Specifically, that the packaging states that it's made in Taiwan, which apparently violates China's labeling requirement for imported goods from Taiwan. Obviously, that's kind of a weird thing China does. I know that there is some tension between Taiwan and China, but of course, that's not really something we get in here. It does seem odd given if it was made in Taiwan and they want to say that, they should be able to say that. But of course, China has some pretty wild laws kind of all over. But either way, this is apparently one of them. And according to this, as a result, AMD will likely have to prepare new packaging for their reference SKUs for China. Meaning, if you're in China and you're hoping to pick up one of those reference designs, you likely won't be able to on release. Not only that, but when we go over here, we can see that the German publication Igor's Lab claims to have learned that their 10,000 reference 7900 series cards going to be available at the EMEA region and around 3,000 units allocated for Germany. Now, Igor's Lab story actually states specifically only 10,000 reference cards each for EMEA, and that definitely doesn't sound like too many. So it is sounding like AMD did not produce too many of these cards. I mean, we're talking just 3,000 cards for Germany. Not only that, but it actually gets worse when we look at their board partners. It says one of the big exclusive partners won't ship its products until after the official launch, and they won't hit store shelves until 1 week later. Apparently, another anonymous vendor won't arrive until January 2023. So that's definitely pretty bad and shows that there might be some pretty serious issues with supply for AMD's GPUs. Not only that, but according to a discussion on Board Channel, the new coronavirus outbreaks have forced some factories to close their doors. A few affected factories have recently reopened that are involved in Radeon 7900 series shipments, but with the fact that they were closed, I don't know if that messed up some parts of the supply chain, but like I said, it is not sounding good. And lastly for today, we finally get to see some of the first third-party benchmarks for AMD's upcoming RX 7900 XTX. As you can see down here, these are Geekbench benchmarks, and first up we have OpenCL score. And when we compare this to the RTX 4080, we can actually see that the 7900 XT loses. I believe the 4080 wins by around 8 or 9%, somewhere right around there. So not a huge difference, but the 4080 in this is on top. With that said, when we move down to Vulkan, things get very different. As you can see here, the 7900 XTX got 179.6 thousand. Oh, and when we look up, we can see that it does actually mention it in both of these benchmarks, 7900 XTX. But anyway, it got 179.6 thousand with the 4080 at just 148.8 thousand. That means the 7900 XTX is over 20% faster than the 4080 in Vulkan. Basically, AMD's new GPU is definitely looking very impressive, and it may depend on the game as to which one wins. But of course, the 7900 XTX is set to be quite a bit cheaper than the 4080. I'd obviously suggest waiting for third-party reviews, but at least according to this, it is looking pretty good. So while that does it for today, I do hope you liked the video, and let me know what you think. Are you pumped for the 7900 XTX, or have you already picked up one of Nvidia's newest 4000 cards? Let me know down in the comments below. And if you liked the video, please subscribe. And as always, have a great day.